welcome everyone to the Power Shift Automotive channel. It's been a while since I've done some actual video. I wanted to introduce a new project, being this. If anybody knows what it is, you're already wondering where I even found one. They used to be pretty popular back in the 80s. They were known as the entry-level sports sedan. I guess you could even consider that they kind of started the sedan, like a sporty sedan lineup for all auto manufacturers. Dodge kind of paved the way with this vehicle here, being the cousin that you may know or be more familiar with as the Chrysler LeBaron. The Chrysler LeBaron GTS, which was essentially the same thing, four-door sedan, available with the turbo four-cylinder. But this one actually is a Lancer. Yeah, a lot of people know the Mitsubishi Lancer or the Lancer Evolution, but this came before that. It's a long-lost turbo Dodge. The Dodge Daytonas and the Dodge Omnis were a lot more well-known, or even the LeBarons. Those were a lot more common. But this one here, I found it not too far from home. I paid what I feel is a fair price. I don't want to say that I got a steal on it, or I paid overpaid, but I feel that it was a fair price. I'm the third owner. The original owner was from Pennsylvania. The guy that I purchased it off of bought it from him in Pennsylvania, and it was in Ohio the rest of its life after that. So knowing that, it does have rust. But given that, the age under the hood and everything is very nice. The rockers are pretty well gone, but I plan to replace those. I did do a fuel pump in this because it was having some issues where I would drive it and it would drop the fuel pressure. I did want to get video on that, but I wasn't sure if that was going to fix the problem or not. However, this is kind of the start on it. It is a 1986 Dodge Lancer with the 2.2 turbo engine. It does have some previous modifications, as in a better cylinder head, the newer fuel injected cylinder head with roller rocker arms, a Mopar ECU, now the fuel pump upgrade. It is a 5-speed manual, front wheel drive. It's a pretty neat looking little car. I'm really excited to clean it up. As you can see, the front bumper is kind of peeled off. There's a couple other spots where the rust has come through around the rear rockers, or the rear wheel arches. So I want to go ahead and kind of clean it up, not make it anything super fancy. I do have a set of wheels for it that are an OEM style wheel. This mirror is broken. I do have the replacement mirror glass for it. The windshield has a crack in it. I want to get a new windshield for it. The driver's seat frame is kind of seen better days, but it is broke. I think I can re-weld it and make that work. But I think it'll be an interesting project, and hopefully it'll kind of gain some attention and see how things go. But I'm pretty excited about it. It's a pretty good deal for an obscure 80s car that it's already turned heads in the little bit of time that I've driven it. I think just because people don't know what it is, it just isn't one of those common things. They were really common back in the 80s, early 90s, turbo Dodges in general, but now you just don't see many of them at all. So this is my journey into an obscure, inexpensive 80s sports sedan that is turbocharged and manual transmission. So follow along with the journey. So here's the beginning of the walk around. As you can see, It's fared decently for being an Ohio and Pennsylvania car its entire life. It does have rust. Unfortunately, being in the northern states here, we don't have the luxury of finding many things that aren't rusty or completely rusted out. But I just wanted to go over the inside. It does have 78,000 original miles. I believe these are a get rag transmission. It is a 5-speed. The driver's seat has seen better days. As you can see, it's pretty, the rail there is broke. It does have power seat option that does indeed still work. Amenities like cruise control, the door indicator does work sometimes. I don't know why that isn't working for this one now, but first impressions of the interior are not terrible. The seat has a little bit of wear. The rear seat is in pretty decent shape. A little bit of staining, but that can be cleaned up with some APC or a steam cleaner, or even some like carpet or fabric cleaner. This car is indeed a 4-door hatchback. The entire hatch opens. These are the extra set of wheels that I got with this car. I do intend on running these once I get some tires for it. However, the overall interior condition of this car is really nice. Still has the factory package tray cover. This is the Lancer ES that does designate the turbocharged 4-cylinder engine option. A little bit of rust on the wheel arches. I plan on just trying to blend that the best that I can. I don't intend to make this a show car, but more a good driver. The steering wheel I do find to be horrendous. However, Dodge throughout the 80s and 90s weren't known, heck, even all the way up into the 2000s, weren't really known to have the greatest of interiors. But it does share similar properties to a Dodge Dakota interior. I'm pretty familiar with those. Growing up, Dad had a few Dakotas, and it reminds me a lot of that. But I would like to change out the steering wheel. I don't know. I'll probably keep it just to keep it for originality if somebody were to purchase this and want to have the OEM steering wheel to put back in it, but I definitely want to change it. Factory turbo badging. Vent on the hood. Has a Pennsylvania inspection stickers from 2004. My impressions on the interior, though, I haven't touched it yet. It is dirty. It sat for about 17 years. The previous owner put about 4,000 miles on it in those 17 years, so it has sat a while. You can tell it's got its little bit of dust and what I'm guessing is a little bit of mold. It is rather complete. I do have this. This is actually a tape deck holder that goes in here. I was messing around with it and pulled it out to maybe try and set something up for maybe like a wideband gauge, possibly, because I do intend on doing a little bit of performance upgrades to this. However, it does have quite a bit of center console space. Kind of a weird little armrest, but pretty well ergonomic. I am back a little bit just for the view, but your hand does, you rest your arm on the center console and your hand pretty well falls on the shifter, so it is pretty smooth. The reverse does have this lockout all the way over and up. Believe it or not, it's identical to my wife's Dart transmission, over and up when you pull it up. I thought that was pretty neat that Chrysler still uses this same kind of collar. Not sure why the indicator there, normally that does light up when the doors are open. I'm not sure what's going on there. I may have to have the key on for it to indicate. Alright. This is one thing that is kind of different about the Dodge key. If you're familiar with older GMs, the key goes in like this, where in a Dodge, it always goes like this. Pretty rudimentary gauges. There's my indication for the door. It actually does show you which doors are open, which was kind of a luxury, I guess. It's weird because this is a manual transmission car. However, it did have luxuries, I guess, in a mid-80s sedan as AC, cruise control, power windows. This one actually has power mirrors, where a lot of them, I guess, from what I understand, had just manual mirrors. Power seats, and something that I find very interesting, under this your bottom seat cushion, this is kind of, there's actually an adjustable thigh and lumbar little air bulb, and it does switch from thigh to lumbar. I don't think it retains the air. I can see it moving the thigh just a little bit, but it doesn't hold it. And I don't think the lumbar is adjusting much of anything either, which I'm not too worried about that. However, it is very, very neat for, you know, an 80s sedan made by Dodge. Go ahead and fire it up here. This, you'll notice it doesn't have a clutch safety switch. A few things that I've noticed that don't work. Obviously the AC, because the system isn't charged. I don't know about the cruise control. I haven't actually driven it enough to try, but the wipers, the wiper motor doesn't actually work. So I don't know if it's in the connection in this stalk here, or if it's actually the wiper motor has locked up. The power windows are kind of sticky. The driver's side is actually off. I believe the connection to the window regulator is broken, but It is obscure. The headliner is quite saggy. The dome light works. This dome light here works if you wiggle the switch in the door. But then it also lights up the doors. The rear center console has a light. It's got a lot of character for a quote-unquote obscure car in today's standards. This was a common vehicle back, you know, in the 80s. However, it's one of those oddball vehicles nowadays, and just want to do a little bit of a comparison and get it out on the road and do a quick driving video with it as well. The underhood of this car is actually laid out fairly simple. It is non-intercooled, turbocharged, port fuel injection. As I was saying about the cylinder head upgrade, if anyone is familiar with these turbo Dodges, the 782 casting there, that is what designates the newer, I think it's called like a swirl port. It is the combustion chamber has it's hard to explain. It has kind of a ramp or a design on the inside of the combustion chamber to allow it to swirl the air as it comes in for a cleaner, more efficient burn. It is a little bit more efficient for a flow aspect as well. The AC is unhooked. I checked it. It doesn't have any charge. I would like to get that upgraded and get it converted to R134, replace all the gaskets that would go into those, anywhere that the O-rings would go through. Try and get that going. Being a non-intercooled, I find this, can't quite tell. I find it very interesting that the throttle body is before the turbocharger. It actually leads directly into the actual compressor inlet of the turbocharger, where in an intercooled setup or more common in like a DSM, the throttle body is right on the intake manifold, and it forces the air out of the turbocharger in through the throttle body, where this is kind of a, I guess what you'd call or consider a draw-through setup. It is fairly clean for the age and the bit of rust that is on the rockers. The underhood is actually pretty nice. It even has what I'm guessing is factory paint still on a lot of the AC components, and the different hoses, and like the loom is still pretty shiny. The tape has deteriorated, as you can see, but the loom is actually really shiny, which is surprising. One of my favorite parts of the car is actually the front end. The grille and the headlights, it's fairly aggressive looking with the front little air dam, the little air splitter on the front. This is, I believe, an ES only. ES and the Shelbys, the later Shelbys, had side skirts as well. But I do believe that the non-turbo Lancer didn't have the chin spoiler like that. These old wheels are pretty atrocious. However, I'm not sure if these are factory mud flaps, because they have a correlating color that matches like with the body color. But it does have those. I am missing the trunk emblem. However, I do have a lead on one from a local guy. The mirror is cracked. The windshield is cracked. Overall though, for an 80s sports sedan that's obscure, something different, I'm in love with it. Let's go for a drive, shall we? My sweet power seat that still works. Now, I haven't done anything to this vehicle other than change out the fuel pump to a probably overkill for this setup, Walbro 255 liter per hour. I did have to repair the fuel filler neck because the fuel filler neck is not available anymore from anywhere. Installed a new gas tank seal. Was able to salvage the gas tank straps, so I didn't have to do that, and I installed a new fuel filter. Other than that, this car is exactly how I purchased it and exactly how it has been since, at least it's been in the previous owner's possession. Right off the bat, one of the first things that I notice is the clutch. I'm not sure if it is a OEM clutch that's in this or if it's been upgraded, because it does chatter quite a bit. Now, I don't know if that is something to do with the fact of it sitting for as long as it has, or if it is actually an upgraded clutch. But as you can see, very smooth. The seat is pretty awful. It moves quite a bit. Anytime that I get on it, I actually have to hold myself to the steering wheel. It's already getting looks. People wonder what the heck this thing is. These tires that are on this are very old winter tires. The rears are even down to almost showing a cord at one spot. But other than that, I mean, it's such a weird, the way that it feels. It's kind of firm here in town over the bumps, but yet it still floats like it's just the suspension components from sitting. The rubber is probably deteriorated and the shocks are probably not that great. Actually very torquey. It's pretty peppy and responsive. I think they were rated around 145 horse stock. With the Mopar ECU, the 782 cast on the cylinder head with the roller rockers and the different cam profile probably does help quite a bit. But I mean, it is kind of windy, and these tires are probably not aired properly. But I mean, it does, for the most part, go pretty straight down the road. Cruising along 55. No serious crazy vibrations. One thing I did notice, that these brakes are awful. I almost feel as if it gets brake fade under normal braking conditions. I don't know if the rear brakes are an adjustment. It does have rear drum brakes. The clutch shatters on release going upshifting or downshifting, so I don't know if that's just the nature of this clutch or if it's aftermarket, but very peppy and responsive. I'm thoroughly impressed with. Just thinking back to the cars of this era, where a Fox body Mustang probably only ran mid to low 14s, and that's just a guess based on, you know, facts that I've seen over the ages. But this car, I bet, just from, you know, a butt dyno perspective, I'd say it's definitely every bit of 175 horsepower, and that in this car, I'm pretty sure it only, I want to say it's probably around 2,800 pounds, which is very light for a sedan of the era. I don't know, it definitely surprises you. It does have a little bit of a vibration on the down. That may be just from the old tires. Kick it into neutral and it kind of goes away, but very peppy. I love this thing. I wish that more of my four-cylinder Dodges that I had growing up, my Omnis and stuff like that, would have been turbocharged, because this thing's a blast. I had a blast in those, but this thing just brings a whole new perspective to, man, that's a little bit of a vibration there coming down about 45 mile an hour. But it really puts into perspective like how underrated these cars are, just because I guess they weren't exactly attractive cars, so I understand that, but these were extremely fun enthusiast cars. Kind of a little bit of a bounce to it. I'm guessing that the front struts are pretty well whooped, but sitting for a car does not help it one bit. Driving a car and putting the miles on it and maintaining it is the best for a car. These cars are, you know, few and far in between, so they deserve to be driven. They deserve to be shown to the world. We're back to the house. I want to make sure that all of the wheels are actually tight properly, because I have not verified that. I would think that they are, but just to make sure that the vibration isn't from like a loose wheel or something like that. Everything seems to be tight on the outside here. Rear wheel bearings have a little bit of play in them. But now we'll go hit a small set of curves. Being here in Ohio, we don't have too many curvy roads. Everything's pretty straight and flat, but there is a little bit of a curvier road. A couple of them outside of my town where I live here. Does have that slight peculiar vibration right around 45 mile an hour, but that could be these old tires. I'm just impressed with how nicely it drives. It doesn't pull violently to one side of the road or the other. It cruises amazing. These seats are super comfortable. The brakes are rather atrocious though. It's rather bouncy over bumps, which a lot of that has to do with just the struts and the shocks being worn out, but it's very nimble still. Tires squeal at 35 miles an hour. That just, those old tires. And I mean, if this thing had a little bit better shocks, I think it would be really nice. It's actually pretty responsive. The power steering isn't overly, I guess the power steering isn't overly powered, so it still has a nice feel to it. Roll into it here. Zero to 60 is very respectable. These old brakes do not like life. They're grabbing a little bit better than they did the other day, but very bouncy over the bumps. This is a pretty cool day. I'd say probably about 55 degrees or so. Being non-intercooled, it will heat soak on the intake manifold, just because the intake manifold and the exhaust are both on the same side. It bounces like crazy. But I mean, for the most part, it does retain quite a bit of the power. It doesn't heat soak so much that it's fast at first, and then once it actually gets the temp, that it dramatically slows it down. I did notice a little bit more with two other people riding in the car with me, that it does draw it down a bit. However, with just me in the car, it's very respectable. This thing just has so much charm. It's like nobody knows of these anymore, and I just love it. Any turbo Dodge from the 80s, even the 90s, like the Spirit RTs, and they're known, but they're just very unknown at the same time. If you know what they are, you know, but if the majority, 98% of people don't even know what these cars are, don't even know that they existed. This is fully stock exhaust. It still has a catalytic converter and a muffler. I do plan to do a little bit of an upgrade on the exhaust. I haven't decided. I thought about doing an inspiration. My friend has a side pipe on his SRT4. Thought about possibly doing something like that, but then I also like the sleeper factor of this car to maybe run a full exhaust out the back of the car. But then again, who doesn't like a side piped turbo Dodge? Aside from the bouncing and the old tires, it's very peppy. I don't want to say it's a fast car because it's not fast, but it's quick, it's responsive, it's a blast to drive, very spiritedly down low. I could tell with a little bit of refreshing on the suspension that it would handle pretty well if you do a brake upgrade from like a later Dodge Daytona or even the Shelby Lancer. is kind of twitchy mid-corner, but it could be due to the wind. But you can kind of feel like it doesn't feel very firmly planted and going a little bit quicker through S-curves. It just feels like the car gets upset, like it unloads the suspension a little bit. But again, a car that's sat since 2003. The suspension's whooped, the brakes are whooped, but it's got a heart of gold. Coolant temperature is very low. I think the thermostat may be stuck open, or somebody maybe didn't install a thermostat in this car, because they were known for head gasket issues. Oil pressure is great, voltage is great. I believe that the fuel level is working. I don't know how accurate it is, but it does seem to be working. Brake light is on. I don't know if that's maybe like a proportioning valve or something like that, because it did have some brake work done to it before I got it. Little things though, I mean, that's stuff that I can deal with driving it, especially being an obscure daily driver. It's freaking awesome. Nothing beats rowing your own gears in a sedan, turbo front wheel drive. I mean, obscure manual car. This thing will just turn heads no matter what. Whether it's good or not, I don't know, but it's definitely awesome. Thanks everyone for joining in. This will conclude my initial review of my 1986 Turbo Dodge Lancer ES. I appreciate everyone joining in and checking it out and enjoying my learning experience on how it did overall. And this was kind of my second or third time really actually driving it around out in the countryside since I bought it. But I am planning to do a little bit more video on this as I go through different things that I want to maybe intake upgrade, exhaust upgrade, maybe up the boost a little bit and get new tires on those wheels. But for now, this will wrap it all up, and I appreciate it. We'll catch everybody next time.